So, we are discussing about applet, and in the last module we have discussed the standard methods which can be included in an applet. Now, we will discuss about the HTML concept. As you know, applet cannot be executed independently. So, in order to view an applet, we have to host this applet code into an HTML page, and then this HTML page will be browsed by means of an web browser like say Internet Explorer or Netscape Navigator or the Hot Java browser, and in Java JDK there is a built in viewer also called the applet viewer. Now, whatever it is there, first the idea is that applet should be hosted by an HTML page, embedded into an HTML page. So, in this module we will see how this hosting is possible using HTML tag. Actually, one specific tag that is there in HTML, HTML in hypertext markup language is called the applet tag. So, we have to discuss about applet tag here. Now, so applet tag is basically, let us first see exactly how a typically an HTML page look like. Now, here you see HTML is a basically tag based, as we said. Now, this is basically HTML and this is the end. So, these are the tag, it is called the HTML tag, that means this indicates that this is the HTML page 1. So, if this is the tag and then browser use it, no issue, browser will see the blank page here, because in this tag nothing is there. Now, the next that we can do is that head. So, head is basically we can write what is the title that will be there. So, head is basically will on HTML browser will show it, here the browser view is not there. So, a simple HTML file if you use it, browser will show that, and then within this body we have a text is a header 1. Header 1 is a very big font, large font. So, this will display here in the header font. Now, you see there is a different tag we are using. So, this is another tag B. So, B tag indicates that it will display some font in a bold, as well as I tag indicate that italics. So, this basically text will be displayed both in bold and italics form. The next tab is H2. H2 is the text is basically small tag, and here not H1 is a very bigger font, H2 is a little bit smaller medium size font. So, this will display here, and you see there is another A ref is basically link. So, this is another tag A and then closing tag. So, every tag is at starting and then closing syntax, and then this basically is the link, that means from there this is a hyperlink. If we do it, so this and in this basically hyperlink. Hyperlink means if you click it, it will go to this link actually, that means it move to browser moves the focus from this page to some other distant page. Then there are many other image also can be included in the text, like, and in order to include an image. So, image img is a tag for that. So, this basically display this kind of image on your screen, and the comment if you want to include in HTML, it basically comment will be included within this angular, then exclamation, then dot dot, and then it is a closing is this one. So, these are the few tags that I have shown here. So, that how the HTML page can be designed using the tag only, and the browser it is basically run an HTML page. So, browser running an HTML page is basically in an interpretative manner. So, it will basically first tag, then second tag, next tag, and so on. As it is interpretative, not compilation, nothing is there. So, if there is any mistake in this tag, say suppose H1 is there, no closing this one. So, this means that this will completely ignore. So, browser will not do anything, ignore it. It does not mean that the next portion will not be executed. So, next portion will be interpreted and executed. So, it is an interpreter, and it will see every tag and interpret every tag and then display or paint on the screen. So, this basically the browser will paint on a window actually. So, this is basically the HTML page concept, and one more important thing that HTML tags whatever you can use, it is a case insensitive, whether capital letter, small letter, it does not matter for the browser, if browser will do it correctly. So, it is a case. So, whether lower case or upper case, that is not the issue there. So, this way the HTML page can be executed there. Now, we have discussed about the different tag. There is one special tag that is called the applet tag. So, this special tag is basically to include the code that you want to include in an HTML page. So, the tag look like applet, and this is the code indicate that which is the class file in the Java class compiled version of the Java applet program, and then this is basically width and height, that means it shows that how much size of the applet would be in the windows that the browser will take to display your applet. So, these are the very nominal applet tag concept that is there, and then you can use it, and you can So, if you can do it, your browser can run your applet from the machine, current machine. Now, so this is the idea about, but there are few hinges there, is that now applet is little bit disregarded in the sense that many browser they do not support unless you use a special plugin for that. However, the Chrome totally ignore any applet tag in the HTML page. Internet Explorer till version 4.0 it was supporting, and after that it stopped supporting. Then Mozilla it can support if you use one special plugin for that, and this is a Netscape Navigator, it always favor the applet code, applet tag in an HTML page. That means, Netscape Navigator browse successfully, and the Opera is another browser also which does not support it. So, many browser they do not support, many browsers support conditionally under the usage of plugin whatever it is there. So, these are the basically restriction, and the restriction there are certain reason for this kind of restriction, mainly it is from the security point of view. So, many browser they have stopped supporting applet code in an HTML. Now, see applet code, whenever it was initiated initially, applet code has many other parameters for the complete specification of applet. The parameters those are there in applet code are like, which are some specification are optional and some are necessary. Those are the optional which are written in the square bracket look like. So, for example, this is the applet tag initial, and this is the starting of the applet, and there if you see within this there is a few portion which you can include, and then this is in the applet portion. So, this is very important. So, this and then curly brackets is basically the different parameter that the applet tag will allow to specify for your special viewing of your applet. So, this is there, and what are the special thing that can be here you see, and the code base is the one parameter, archives is there, code already we have discussed, and then object, alt, name, width, height, align, v space and h space are the few things that we have, and apart from this param name also some things are there. If the param name is there, then separate angular brackets should be used for each parameter name. Param name probably for passing parameter or passing an input from HTML page to applet we have discussed, you can recall. Now, here we can see out of these different specification that is possible for an applet, a few things are mandatory. These are code, width and heights, these are the mandatory. That means, you have to give it. If you do not give it, your applet the tag will not be executed by your browser successfully, whereas the other, the code base, archives, object, alt, name and align, all these things are optional, and then param name also optional, you can have, you also may not have it. So, these are the different tags specification. So, for the applet tag is concerned are there. Now, in our next few slides we will see exactly what is the meaning of each specification in the applet tag. Now, these are the I have listed a few things that you can take your own time to go through and then understand about it, but I will give the detailed description in our next slides. And as I told you, HTML also has the different versions, and HTML5 onwards the applet tag is not supported, rather instead of applet tag they supported some other concept, it is called the object. I will discuss these things. Now, first is basically the code as it is the as we have learned it, within this applet the code indicates that what is the class file that you want to include width and height specification. So, this is the minimum portion that it should have in your applet tag to run an applet. So, this is basically code is there, and then code is basically here one important point that you should note. Whenever you run an HTML file hosting a class file, it basically requires two things. The HTML file itself, it should be saved somewhere, and then the dot class file should be saved somewhere. So, if you do not specify anything explicitly, then your browser assume that the dot class file and HTML file are belongs to the same directory. If you want to explicitly mention that it is not in the same directory, but somewhere else, then we should use the code base. So, code base usually accompanied with code if you want to tell that the HTML file is here and then code is somewhere else. Okay, regarding code base we will discuss details. So, and another thing is that so far the width and height whenever the applet code, it is not necessary to maintain in this order. It also can be in any order like here width, height, and also another thing is that this is the width in pixel, those things also not necessary to put in a double quote, but is a customary to for the improving the viewer viewability. So, we usually put in the double quote, but this needs to be put in the double quote always. So, here is an example like, so this is also correct and this is also correct. So, these are the code, and this code and with height and width are the mandatory things. Mandatory means you have to use it, without using you cannot do that. Now, let us come to the concept of code base. So, code base is basically showing the relative address of your or base address of your applet. Now, what exactly the idea it is that if you want to import your class file from a distance machine from your local other than your local. So, browser from which machine it is browsing, it is called the local to that browser, and if you want to have access from some distance machine, remote machine, then the through browser that can be connected. Here is an example, say HTTPS indicates that it is the location of the remote repository where this class file is there. So, this means that your browser will connect to these sites and then check this that class file, import it into your local machine, and then this applet code will be executed. So, applet code is not necessary to be executed from your own machine from the distance. Usually in case of internet programming we have to do that. You can import your HTML page from the remote machine, and importing means all the class file, applets, all the image, all the audio, video files, whatever it is required needs to be fetched into your browser machine, and then it will be executed there in your browser machine. So, the code base is for that purpose. We can explicitly mention that which is the location where your class file is there. Even if you use the same thing in your own local machine also, but it is that the HTML file is belongs to one directory, whereas the class file belongs to a separate directory. So, the base is basically here, which is the base directory, and with respect to this base, which is the class file that you want to use. So, in the code base also that we can use it, but in that case we have to use the file command here. So, file and then the location of the directory and then the name of the class file that you want to use it. So, this is the use of the tag, the code base, and archive is there for this purpose is that, say suppose as I told you, applet can be viewed from your local machine containing its elements from the distance machine. If you want to do that, then every times you want some things to be included in your applet, it needs to be connected to your remote machine and then import it and then store it and then display. So, instead of whatever the files that is required for that HTML page, you can put into a archive in a jar file it is called. Here for example, all files those are required for an HTML page can be put into one jar file. Then browser what it will do is that browser will import only once with only single connection to the remote server and then fetch it into your local machine, and then from this jar file whatever the file that is required, image or video, audio or any other class file will be extracted from there and will be referred to this one. So, this archive commands will basically gives an idea about that which is the jar file that needs to be fetched only once in a lifetime of the viewing. So, this is the idea about the archive tag specification in the applet code. And then object as I told you, HTML5 and upwards version of the HTML they have stopped supporting applet code. So, in that case is basically allow to use the object code. So, object code is same as the applet tag actually. So, applet is not there. So, here basically the same, instead of applet you use the object, that is all. So, this basically the idea about, and other code base, then width, height, everything is applicable to that only. So, object is an alternative to applet tag, that is the newer version in the HTML page. And here again, if you want to suppose you do not know whether your browser will support whether HTML4 or HTML2 or HTML5 or upwards. So, sometimes to make it more robust for version independent or compatible to any versions. So, some HTML designer use both object as applet code here. For example, object is there here and then applet code is also there. So, if it is fetches for the for example, HTML4 you want to your browser support HTML4, then object will not be applicable to that HTML browser. So, in that case you can use this one. So, all these will be ignored, but applet will be considered in that case. On the other hand, another browser which support HTML5, then the only object. So, this will be ignored by that browser, only this portion will be considered and the applet, that file will be successfully browsed. So, this is the idea about that both object and applet can be merged together to make it more compatible to your browser system. And width and height, as I told you, specification of the height and width, by changing these parameters we can resize your applet view, and that can be done from your applet from the HTML page itself. So, that is why before viewing the HTML, so HTML will be floated in front of within a set of text in a multimedia document, like it can include audio, image and then video also, in addition to the hyperlinked text, hypertext we can say, and then the applet is basically an windows within this text also. It appears as a living one things for the browser. So, in that case we can specify the width and height, the how much space of your total view area of your display that it will take to display your applet. So, this is the width and height is an essential one parameters. Okay. And then the alt. Say suppose your applet, there are some mistakes in your class file, or there is a problem that it is not able to load it successfully, then browser can give some message to the user. So, here the message that can be given by means of alt statement. In case suppose this is a problem, right, your browser face the problem of fetching this class or executing this class file, then it will be there, otherwise this will not be executed. So, this is basically for giving a user good interaction or impression about viewing a page. So, alt statement is used there. So, alt is basically an alternate text within this double quote can be used, and you see one thing here, all these things will be within this applet tag, whatever this code base, code, alt, width, height, name, whatever it is there, those are the within this applet tag, and finally, this is called the final applet tag. Okay. Next is the name, and in your HTML page you can use many applets into the same HTML page, or sometimes applet can be used in a distributed programming system also. From your machine you are running an applet, from another machine another user running another applet, and both the applets needs to be communicated to each other. And for this communication, so that actually one specification that is required, that which applets communicate to which one. That means, each applet should have their own identity. This identity can be mentioned by means of name. So, name is the one specification that is there by which we can specify that if each applet has its own unique name. And then by this name, the applet in your applet programming using the method get name, the name of the applet can be understood, and using this understand some communication can be established or some communication protocol can be implemented. So, that is why the name tag specification has been there in the applet. And then so name can be obtained by the get applet method, not get name. Okay, so these are the there are few more tag align. Align means you can view your applet in a particular position. For example, there are so many position, left, right, top, bottom and absolute bottom, whatever. There are many other specifications that you can find, you can mention, so that applet will be placed accordingly, whether left side, right side, top, bottom, absolutely top, top of some text like this one. So, these are the basically placing on applet in an HTML page, HTML area view windows that is browsed by the applets. And V space and H space is basically the use of this. Say suppose this is the total HTML view of your the total HTML page, and there are some text like, and here also some text like, and here you want to display your applet like suppose. Now, so V space H space is basically how much gap that you want to give between the text and this applet, and so it is basically V space. Similarly, if there is some other text it is there or some other applet is there, you want to place it, then this basically H space means what is the gap that you want to allow between the text or this one. So, it basically V space H space totally is say that other than this is the applet area, this is the applet view, this is the width and height, is basically how much space that you want to do it. Sometimes it is basically used for good impression of the applets and an artistical presentation of these applets, that in there is HTML that can be controlled using this V space H space commands. And parameter name, param is another important parameter, extensively used one parameter that is required to specify the input to an applet. As you know, applet cannot take the direct input from the browser machine or cannot take direct input from the distant machine also. So, if you want to pass any input to your applet, then in the HTML page the parameter names to be mentioned there. Now, the syntax it is like this. The tag specification is called the param, the name of the parameter. For example, in this example as we see, font name is the name of a parameter and value is basically the courier. So, that means this is the parameter, the font name, the value is courier. Then font size is another parameter whose value is 14 at present. The name is image source, the value is basically the file location, and then name is another is that audio source, the value is this one. So, here we can see these are the different parameters whose values are like this, which we want to pass from this HTML page to this applet when it is in execution. So, whenever the applet starts its execution, it will refer whatever the parameter that is mentioned there in this HTML applet code will obtain the value from here and it will use it. So, for this purpose the parameters concept param tag is there defined there, and this tag you see, this is the applet, applet is there, this is the applet part. Yeah, this is basically the applet tag, but within this applet tag a separate parameter tags are to be mentioned there. So, and then whole the things will be basically the applet tag for the HTML page. Now, so param name, so how an applet can get these values. So, for this purpose the get parameter methods are there defined in applet class and which can be called for this and then can get these values from the HTML itself. So, if you change these values from your machine and then this will display with the different value to your applets. Now, let us see one example to illustrate the use of this one, and this is suppose the HTML page that you have defined, and the my class dot class is our applet which basically want to take input from this value, and then how the applet code will be there. Now, here is the applet code which look like this. Here if you see, the param demo is the name of the applet which we are going to demo it, and these are the different parameters called the field of this class, like font name, font size, leading, active, all these are the variable as we have declared in a class. So, these are class members, and here you see the method start is basically to be either it is in the start method or initialize method, you can read the value. So, here in this case we can read the value from the start method or like this one. Now, here as you see, all the parameter value that will be read from the HTML page, they will read from a string. So, let the name of the string be param and read, and then from this parameter string we can convert into the different form. So, is a get parameter font name which is there in a HTML page, we will get this, and then font name will be there. So, this is the basically parameter that is there, font name for the courier. So, the value will be there. So, font name is currently the courier, and it is basically the try catch is mentioned if in case suppose this value is not present in the HTML page like this one. And then so there is another param is if you want to convert in integer also, because it is read as a string. So, you can change into the integer. So, integer class, then parse int, it will convert the string to integer. So, font size and then this one. Okay. Now, so this way the different parameters, there are few more parts of the text is the code is there, the different parameters can be read using this get parameter method is there. Now, other parameter also get parameter leading and then get parameter account enable, all this value will be read from the HTML page, and then once the value is loaded into your applet, and then we can use them in your pen method. So, here is the pen method, and you see whatever the value that we could read it from the HTML page like font name, font size, leading and active, and then they can be printed on the screen like in this case. And then if you run this applet using the HTML file that we have previously shown, it will basically like this one. So, what we want to say here is that whatever the parameters we want to pass from an HTML page to an applet, they can be embedded into the HTML page itself in within the applet tag by the special tag specification called the param. So, this way we can pass the parameter and we can run this like this. So, usually the HTML page designer have this provision to pass the different values, or there is a many other way also it can be there. One good example that we can have it, then we can see the applet is okay, it is just a Windows program, and this is the okay, this is the HTML page for this applet, it will look like. The applets, okay, finding an applet size. Now, sometimes it is required to interact with the applet size with some situation, then we need to know what is the current size of the applet. So, the current size of the applet can be understood using another method called the get size, which is defined in applet methods are there. So, this basically get the applet size like, and this example is says for a current applet what is its width and height parameter, that can be read here. Now, there is also another method is also in an applet is basically called the show status method. So, here basically idea is that this basically showing the status of the applet. If the applet started its execution, it is called the applet started. If it is destroyed, it is called the applet is stopped or killed, or if it is applet is not yet started, like not started, this kind of. So, this is the called the status bar of the applet, and this is the title of the applet. Now, sometimes the show status we can, for some reason that we want to display our own what is called the message onto this one. So, this can be done using the show status method, and here is the one simple example how the show status method can be utilized. Here you see this method can be used here, show status and this thing, and if you run this applet, then it basically show in this status bar there that this is shown in the status window like. So, this is the different methods are there that can be used to display the status concept here, and there are few more interesting facts that I want to give before concluding this module. And let us see, the first is HTML file is always necessary to execute an applet. That means, as I have mentioned that HTML code should be there, HTML file is there, but there is a tricks that the tricks is basically HTML applet tag can be directly embedded into the Java program itself, and then that can be used by the applet viewer actually. Now, what is the policy it is here? That means, whatever the applet tag it is there, you just write after the HTML file, either after or before, whatever, wherever it is there, absolutely no problem. Then same .java file can be used. So, no need to maintain two files, one is the .java file or .class and then .html, but only one .java and then corresponding class file should be there, compiled version. Now, here is an example, as you can see here, this is the applet program that we have already know. So, this is the .java file, and here is the HTML code which basically to host it. Now, I can maintain only one file and then let the name of the file is .java. So, this is the .java. So, maybe say status window .java is the name of the applet file, compile it. Now, whenever you go for compilation, those are the things including within this comment, that means your compiler, the Java compiler will ignore this one. On the other hand, whenever applet viewer will come into there, applet viewer will ignore all these parts, because applet viewer cannot understand about this tag and simply ignore it, is just interpret it, but whatever the portions it is there, applet viewer can understand it and then can interpret it. So, if we run this using applet viewer, for example, here run it applet viewer status window .java. So, here you have to write .java, this is the original file, right. So, then the applet viewer will browse it and then display it. So, only one HTML file that you can plan, only one file, only .java file can be maintained, and then no need to maintain explicitly .html file. So, this is the idea about, and many programmers prefer to do that. Whatever the code HTML tag it is required, they usually use in the .java file within the comment lines only. So, this is the one, and another is that is applet the only way to create graphical user interface, or there is many other ways are there. In our next discussion, we will discuss about the AWT, the abstract windowing toolkit. The abstract windowing toolkit allows us to include our code into there. So, using this one also you can do it, but regarding this abstract window toolkit we will discuss all these things in details there. So, it means that in your program you can write one application look like, it is not an applet actually, but it looks like an applet. It is basically called the frame or panel, and that panel is basically an Windows program one. So, this is one other version of the Windows program which can come in the form of a AWT programming, and this is the one AWT code that will be discussed in details. I just want to skip it, and so this way we can run another Windows program other than applet. So, AWT is an alternative to the applet programming actually, and applet regarding AWT programming we will discuss in our next module onwards, and then we will discuss another programming concept in Java, the AWT concept. Thank you very much.